All right, well, welcome back to another midweek video where we go through, talk a little bit about the sermon from this past Sunday, and we dive into the scriptures that we do for, that like Pastor Sam assigns after the sermon, which this week is 2 Corinthians chapter 8, and along with our reading plan that we've been going through 1st and 2nd Peter. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you wanted to go first or if you wanted me to go first.
Yeah, I can start.
Yeah.
I mean, like we had talked kind of beforehand, just how it just kind of changed my perspective of the sermon this week. And then reading through this, through 2 Corinthians 8, just the first thing that kind of stood out to me as I was reading it was in verse, where is it? Verse 5. And not as we expected, but they gave themselves first to the Lord and then by the will of God to us.
Yeah.
And I think that really spoke out to me, because I think first for us to be a part of the body and do what we need to do and to have that desire to give, to read, to worship, we have to first seek after God and give our whole selves to Him, not just our checkbooks or our time, 10, 15 minutes or a half hour on a Sunday. It's all of us.
Yep.
Everything.
Yeah.
We need to, and then by doing that, we can give ourselves to the church, to the body, to the community around us.
Yeah.
It all starts with everything. I think it all starts with God first. And just the totality of it, of not just giving my money, but also my time, my thoughts, my gratitude.
Which was so good that he it's like, it's not just about money, like giving. This is about your time. This is about all, like the totality of your life should be given, which was such a good point, like to the Lord first.
Yeah.
Because if it's not to the Lord first, then it's going to be from wrong motives.
Right. Exactly. And it's like in verse 8, he says, and not as a command, but to prove that the earnestness of others, that your love is also is genuine.
Yes.
And it kind of goes back to his previous letter in 1 Corinthians when he talks about love, right?
Oh,
everybody knows that,
yeah.
right? So if I'm not doing things in love, then I'm not just, you know what I mean? I'm just a noisy sound, like I'm a gong that comes and fades. But if I'm doing this out of love, because of I'm loving God with my heart, mind, and soul. Yeah. With everything. Yeah. And that's what kind of struck me, because like I told you before, growing up, it was always, I don't know if this was what was intended, but what the thought in my mind was always, you give to God to get blessed. Yep. You give to get. Mm-hmm. And that was always something that kind of stuck out to me. And even into my adulthood, that was like something that we just did. Was like, we give because we want to get blessed by God. So we want to give to Him so we can continue getting His blessing. Man. But it doesn't work that way. Yeah. That's not how it works.
But it is how we talk about it. It is how we approach it. But it's why I think it was so important when and this is what I loved about the sermon, like a huge point for me was when Sam said, like, this has to be approached from an eternal perspective. Mm-hmm. If it's not from an eternal perspective, then this is not going to be very fun. Right. Like, you're not going to understand the need to give or why God commands us to give. Right. Like it's going to always, which I think giving will always be a sacrifice. Mm-hmm. It would always rub up against kind of our fleshly desire to like accumulate more and more and more.
Absolutely.
Which I think is a good thing to go against that.
Right.
Because, I mean, you could see in the culture where people are just getting everything that they can, but even that doesn't fulfill. Right. And so it kind of keeps this pride at bay. Mm-hmm. But what helps is having that eternal mindset of, this isn't mine to begin with.
Exactly.
I worked for this, but I only worked for this because God gave me a healthy body to be able to use the hands that I use to work the job that He gave me to make the money that he gave someone else to give me.
Exactly.
It's like, you know.
Yeah, and that's something that's my wife and I have been talking about and going through together, is changing our perspective on how we see just things in general.
Yeah.
Like just being grateful for everything, because we're just not.
Yeah.
We're just not.
Yeah.
We expect, we just expect to get things like, oh, I'm good. Like I do good things. I'm a nice guy. You know, I should get this. Like I deserve it. And that's the wrong way of looking at it, because like you just said, I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't by God's grace and mercy. Like just boom.
Yes.
Like I'm here. You know, I wouldn't be able to drive here.
Yeah.
Like by God's grace, I'm able to have a car.
Yep.
I'm able to have a job and a house, and that could all be gone in a second.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing. It's just, this connects so well in being grateful.
Yes.
And kind of touch on your other point about the eternal perspective. This is just part of, if we're going to be truly the bride of Christ as the church, and shine a light in the darkness, which is what we're supposed to do. We're called to do that. Then we can't ignore this part of giving of our resources, our time, our emotions. Like we need to be able to do that and should do that.
Yeah. Man, that's good. That's good. Hey, yeah, I think it's so important because, like, you know, I think you were saying it as we were preparing, but like, if we say, you know, if we say, you know, if we as Christians say like, yes, God, take everything, you know, take all of my life, except this.
Right.
Just please don't go near my bank account.
Exactly.
Please don't go near, you know what I mean? Like, then it's just kind of like, well, are we really willing to give God everything? And I think a great example of this is to just look at missionaries. I think, you know, my wife served as a missionary for 1.5 years in Mexico, and I witnessed her sell her car, her house, all these things. She gave away all of her stuff, all of her clothes, and just went down with the bare minimum. And it was this great picture of a life that is marked by giving. And like, I'm gonna give you everything, and that means that I'm going to give away this, I'm gonna give away this. It was just such a biblical picture, like in real life for me. And at that time we were dating, but you know, it was just such a beautiful picture. So it's like, if we want to find a way to see the eternal perspective, I mean, God has given us so many examples. Look at the missionaries that he sends out. We have some even from this church. And so look at their life, look at how they model giving and try to model that. Obviously, not everyone is called to leave the country. But we are all called to have generous hearts that are joyful in giving, just as Sam was saying in the sermon.
And it's so hard, like you touched on earlier, to just fight against that. Because you're like, you tense up a little bit because you're like, and a lot of it has to do with trust.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like, am I gonna trust in the holy sovereign king? Or am I gonna trust in my bank account? In my job, and my boss who's a human? Am I gonna put my trust in, I don't know, I guess things of the flesh, I guess I would say. Or the holy sovereign God, who's the creator of all things. So,
man, that is such a good point. Like it is a true test of your trust in God. And I mean, I love how also in the sermon, and Paul even says it in 2 Corinthians 8, where he says like, where is it? He said, this isn't the part that stuck out, but right here in verse 3, he says, for I testify that they gave as much as they were able. Right? So they gave out of their means. And so like as Sam was saying, like there isn't a particular kind of number or numerical, like, I don't know what that is, like line to cross to be a generous giver. It is a matter of the heart. They gave out of the willingness of their heart, out of their means. And this was seen by God as a generous gift. And I think that was so important to say, because again, like when we talk about giving, I do think we tend to kind of create these like little these little checkpoints.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you're in a marathon, it's like, oh, you passed this checkpoint, you're a good giver.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
I gave 3 months in a row.
Yeah.
Like I'm good. I can skip.
Very good.
Things are a little tight. I can skip, or things are busy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna not serve.
Yeah.
In the kids wing, or I'm not gonna
Yeah.
attend prayer meeting because things are a little busy. But I went last month.
Exactly.
So we rationalize things like that.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I hit that mark.
Yep.
And it just saw all these things that this whole series, it
Yeah.
all connects together.
Oh yeah,
Like-
it does, and it's everything is interlaced. Like one thing feeds the other thing,
Yeah.
and I think Sam expressed this point because Sam isn't here right now; they're on vacation. But the point that he expressed that I do want to say again, this comes from Sam, but he said that this doesn't mean that like God hates savings accounts. You know what I mean? This doesn't mean that God doesn't want you to save your money or like invest or any of those things. Like those are good.
It also calls us to be good stewards.
Yeah,
right?
that's stewarding your money well.
Right.
But if that supersedes and stops you from giving your time, you know, your resources, your assets, your money, whatever the case, if that surpasses that biblical command, then you know that has become an idol or that it's not in the right place.
Yeah. And that's what's so hard sometimes is that we want to try to do both.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that I pray daily is for God to give me an undivided heart.
Yes.
That I'm all this way, all for Him.
Yep.
Instead of of what this world has and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think in 2 Corinthians 8, there was one thing that stuck out to me that I do want to make a point of. I'll just read it. In verse 7, he says, "But since you excel in everything," right? He says, "Since you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness, and in love that we have kindled in you, by the gospel and the preaching that they've done to the Corinthians," he says, "see that you also excel in this grace of giving." And I think that is just such a flip in how we see giving, that it is a grace that I get to give.
Right.
Like God has entrusted me with His stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Like He's entrusted me a talent, 10 talents, 5 talents, whatever He's given to each of us, whatever measure of grace He's given to us, He's entrusted it to us to steward it well and to give it for His kingdom.
Yeah.
And of course, like what's the word I'm looking for? It challenges our trust.
Yeah.
And where we are placing our trust, like you said. And so I think it's, as we go about like the do, which is like evaluate, your heart. Where's your heart at in this, like, as we talk about giving, do you feel like a boiling in you and you want to push against this? Well, ask yourself why.
Yeah.
Why do you feel a need to push against the command to give your time, your money, your whatever, your whole life?
Yeah.
And as you start to go through that, you might find some things that don't seem related to giving, but might actually inform you, oh, this is actually something God is trying to deal with in my heart. But I think it was great. Do you have any other points that you want to make about the sermon?
I think you summed it up really well. I think it did change my perspective on a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I think the main thing I want, maybe for everybody to kind of take away is that for this to be, we have to first seek after God. That's number one.
Yep.
And if you're not giving all that you can to God, then this is gonna be, like you said, you're gonna fight against it. And you're gonna be like, I'm not doing, like, that's one thing I can't do.
Yes.
But it's important for us to realize it's all part of a bigger picture.
Yeah.
And that's the main thing.
Yeah.
That I think I would like to
Yeah.
cap it off with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great way to cap it off. And just remember that giving is a grace. which means you get to give, but also God empowers you to give. So like, just as in there, he talks about it, he links it to the grace of Jesus, just as, he only provides salvation through Christ, God provides you the ability to give and to be able to trust him as you do it. So we hope that this is encouraging for you guys. And I hope you guys dive into 2 Corinthians 8. If you haven't watched the sermon, I'll put a link here in the description, in the video, wherever else, so you guys can go and watch that. But other than that, we hope you enjoy your week.
Hey everyone, Pastor Sam here. Thanks for joining us for another midweek Bible study video. If you didn't see the sermon that we were talking about, you can find it here. Or if you're interested in more of these midweek Bible study videos and thoughts as Pastor Mario and I break things down, you can find that here as well. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on all our content. Thanks for joining us.